number 1, write the equation represented by the graph. The graph crosses the y-axis at 3, and we have a negative slope, so we have to go down 1, 2 places, and to the right 1, negative 2 over 1, simplifies to negative 2, so my answer is A. So we're going to go to problem number 7. Problem 7 says to identify the linear function. To identify the linear function, I have to make sure that they all have the same constant rate of change. To get from negative 2 to 0, I add 2. 0 to 2, I add 2. 2 to 4, I add 2. So let's check our y's. To get from 8 to 2, we subtract 6. 2 minus 6 is not 1/2, so it is not A. For letter B, to go from 1 to 2, I add 1. 2 to 3, add 1. 3 to 4, add 1. Negative 3 minus 3 is negative 6. Negative 6 minus 3 is negative 9. Negative 9 minus 3 is negative 12. So the rate of change is negative 3. That is a linear function. We're going to check the other two just to make sure. To get from negative 6 to 0, add 6. 0 to 6, you add 6. 6 plus 6 is 12. 1 plus 3 is 4. 4 plus 3 is not 9. And D, negative 5 plus 5 is 0. 0 plus 5 is 5. 5 plus 5 is 10. 1 plus 2 is 3. 3 plus 2 is not 9. So we are going to problem 11. For number 11, we are given a slope and a point, and we need to identify the y-intercept so that we can find the equation of the line. We're going to take these numbers and plug them into the equation y equals mx plus b. I'm going to plug the y in for y, the slope in for m, the x in for x. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. Bring everything else down. Add 8 to both sides. My y-intercept is 5. So my slope, or my equation is y equals negative 2x plus 5, and that is D. So we're going to go to problem number 5. For problem 5, I need to identify the equation as which one is nonlinear. In order to have a linear function, our exponent cannot be bigger than 1. So I know that these three are going to be linear. But look at D. The square root of any number has 2 answers. It has a positive square root and a negative square root. For example, the square root of 4 is negative 2 and positive 2, because negative 2 times negative 2 gives you 4, and 2 times 2 gives you 4. So for this equation, I'm going to get 2 different answers each time, and I know if I get 2 different answers, it cannot be an equation. So our answer for number 5 is D, which means we're going to be going to number 9. For number 9, we have to use the points to determine the equation. First thing I do is find the slope. That is y minus y over x minus x. 8 minus 4 is 4. Negative 6 plus 2 is negative 4, which gives me negative 1. I'm going to take a point and the slope, plug it in for y equals mx plus b. Negative 1 times negative 2 is 2. Bring everything else down. To isolate b, subtract 2 from both sides. My y-intercept is now 2. So my equation is y equals negative x plus 2, which is b. We're going to problem 14. For problem 14, I have to use the table to find which graph represents the unit rate of a box of pencils. So my points are 5, 4.5 for 5 boxes of it's going to cost $4.50. For number 1, at 5 boxes, my cost is $9.50. It cannot be A. For C, for 5 boxes, my cost is $6.50. It cannot be C. For D, for 5 boxes, it's not even on the chart. It's not D. For B, for 5 boxes, it costs $4.50. So my answer is B, which means I'm going to problem number 3. Problem number 3 says to write the equation by the graph. This graph has a slope of 0 because we're not rising any, we're just going left to right. We know that a horizontal line has a slope of 0. It crosses the y-axis at 4, so y equals 4. We are going to problem 6. For problem 6, which equation qualifies as nonlinear? To be nonlinear, it has to have an exponent bigger than 1, or x has to be in the denominator. For B, my exponent is 3 for my x, so that is nonlinear, which takes us to problem 13. Problem 13 says that you are considering becoming a member of an online video game club where you pay a discounted price to download video games online on a monthly basis. Game World offers a membership for $15 per month and 50 cents per downloaded game. So that's the equation for Game World. Game Go has an equation of y equals $1.25 x plus 5, where x represents the number of downloads and y is the total cost. The membership for gamers is shown in the graph. If you were to download 10 games per month, which video game club would be the cheapest? Well, for gamers, 10 videos cost $20. For Game World, half of 10 is 5, and 5 plus 15 is also $20, so those cost the same. For Game Go, $1.25 times 10 is $12.50, plus 5 is $17.50. So Game Go would be the cheapest because 10 downloads per month would cost $17.50. That takes us to problem 4. Problem 4, which equation can be identified as a linear function? Again, my exponent has to be 1 in order for it to be linear. Here we have x squared, it can't be that. Here we have x squared, it can't be that. For C, x is in the denominator. That means that I can plug in any number for x. Well, if I plug in 0 for x, that's not a linear function, so it can't be C. So my answer is A. A is a linear function. That takes me to problem 15. Problem 15 says the unit cost per pound, that's my slope, of French fries is represented by the equation y equals 83 cents x. What is the unit rate? Unit rate is your slope, and that is 83 cents per pound, which is B. So we are going to problem 2. Problem number 2 says to write the equation represented by the graph. Well, I crossed the y-axis at -1, so we're looking at either C or D. My slope is positive. I'm going up 1 to the right, 1, 2, 3. So my answer is C. Y equals 1/3 x minus 1, and that takes us to problem 10. For problem number 10, use the points to determine the equation of the line. First thing I do is find my slope. Y minus y over x minus x gives me 6/4, which simplifies to 3/2. This equation passes through the origin, so I don't need to solve for b because one of my points gives me what my y-intercept is. So this equation is 3/2 x, that is a. We're going to problem 12. Problem 12 says, given a slope and a point, find the equation of the line. I'm just going to plug all of these numbers into y equals mx plus b until b is the only variable that I have left. -2 is my y, 1/2 is my slope, 6 is my x, half of 6 is 3, bring everything else down. To get b by itself, I have to do the inverse operation. -2 minus 3 is additive inverse. That gives me -5. So my equation is y equals 1/2 x minus 5, which is a. Now we are on problem 8. Problem 8 says to identify the nonlinear function. So we have to identify what the rate of change is to figure out which one is nonlinear. To get from 5 to 7, I add 2. 7 to 9, I add 2. 9 to 11, I add 2. To get from -6 to 4, I add 2. -4 to -2, I add 2. -2 to 0, I add 2. My slope is 1. That is linear. For b, 6 minus 2 is 4. 4 minus 1 is 3. 3 minus 1 is 2. Let's look at our y's. 1 plus 4 is 5. 5 plus 2 is 7. 7 plus 2 is 9. This is 4 over -2, which is -2. These are all 2 over -1, which is -2. That's the same slope. That's the same rate of change, so that is linear. For C, -3 to -2, you add 1. -2 plus 1 is -1. -1 plus 1 is 0. -9 plus 6 is -3. -3 plus 6 is +3. 3 plus 6 is not 12. So this is not linear, which takes me back to problem 1. So I have finished my around the room game.